Hey everyone, I'm Christine. If you're new here to my channel, welcome. If you don't know, I do a series every month and we have a new theme every month. This month's theme is all about family. If you want to catch up with last month's theme, I will link the playlist here so you can go and check that out. But today it's going to be more of a story time video. I've never really done one of these before and I thought it would be a fun opportunity to do that. So I kind of mentioned on my blog, which I will also have linked in the description below, and it's linked at the end of this video if you want to check that out. But I had said on my blog last week, I'd asked you, what is family to you? So I come from a family of 4 siblings. I'm the eldest. I have a brother and then 2 younger sisters. And today I'm going to share with you my family story of immigrating from South Africa to New Zealand. Now a lot of this is from my own memory. I do remember a lot of it. I was very young, but I do have some memories of it. And then a lot of it as well is things that have been told to me by my parents and by family and stuff like that. So if you're interested in hearing about our story, then stick around. So the reason I'm sharing this story with you is because the whole story of my parents moving from South Africa to New Zealand was all about making a huge sacrifice for their children and for their family, and so I thought that it just fitted in quite well with this month's theme. So at the time when my parents did move, they only had 2 children. It was just me and my brother, and we moved from South Africa to New Zealand the day after my 5th birthday. So I didn't really appreciate what my parents did back then because I was young and I didn't understand what was involved, and I also didn't really understand why they had moved, and I found that out later in life. So exactly why, I don't know if they had felt like uncomfortable for a while and had been thinking about moving, but there was one thing that my mum did mention to me that I think was just kind of the last straw, you know, and it was the thing that they needed to just like really prompt them to get moving, and that was that a young girl was brutally attacked by a mob of men, and as a result she ended up contracting AIDS. And like, it was a horrific crime, and it's something that you don't hear about in New Zealand. Like, yes, there's crime here, and a lot of it is gang related, like a huge amount is gang related, and there's domestic violence, which is awful, but you don't see so many just someone attacking someone on the side of the road. That's just not something common, but in South Africa it is. And before I go any further, I just want to say I love South Africa. It is my home. It is my homeland. New Zealand is now my home, and I do call myself a Kiwi, but South Africa will always have a very, very special place in my heart. So please don't think that I hate the country, because I don't. I just hate the things that are happening in the country, and the crime and just the cruelty. I really don't appreciate that. So just if you are, I know a lot of people who are still living in South Africa can get quite defensive about that, and I understand that, because you do love your country, and that makes sense. So please don't think that I'm bashing South Africa. I'm just bashing some of the things that happen in South Africa. So yeah, let me carry on from there. So that was kind of the thing that really prompted them to move. Now my mum was working as a nurse, my dad was a mechanic, so they were very blessed in that they had the right qualifications to be able to move to a different country. They were very easily accepted. But my dad did have to go on ahead of time because he had a job. And I think they'd looked in a few places. They had even looked in South America, and I'm so glad we didn't move there. No offense to anyone living in South America, but yeah, I'm glad we ended up in New Zealand. And my parents made the big move. It would have been a big deal. My dad was gone for I think a couple of months before my mum joined him. And that would have been a really big deal, being left behind with 2 children, 2 very young children. I was 4 and my brother would have been, I think he was like 1.5, 2, around that age. And my dad left for a country he'd never been to before. That was like something big. My parents had never been to New Zealand before. They were just going on faith. They trusted that it was the right thing, that it is what God wanted them to do, and it was a big deal. They were in their mid to late 20s at the time, and I'm in my mid 20s now, and I just think, would I have the courage to leave? You know, like, it was a big deal, and this was in a time where they didn't have email, they didn't have cell phones. Maybe some people had that at that time, but for your average Joe, you couldn't afford that kind of thing. So the other thing is that my family is close with our extended family. They always have been. So it's not like they were estranged from their family and it wasn't a big deal leaving them. It was a huge deal. And even my grandfather took many, many years to accept what happened and why my dad left. It was very, very hard for him to deal with. And I can understand that. My father is his only son, and it was hard for him to say goodbye to my dad, who then moved to the other side of the world, and they didn't know when they'd see each other next. Many years later, my grandfather did come and visit us in New Zealand, and he completely understood why we had left, and that was wonderful. I remember spending our last Christmases there, and obviously as a child I didn't understand the huge impact of everything. But it would have been the day after my 5th birthday is New Year's Day, or New Year's Eve, sorry. And we got on a plane. I remember saying goodbye to my mother's parents. We had stayed at their house. They lived in Johannesburg at the time. And I remember the plane ride. I remember my mum had bought us like wristbands, and it had a leash attached, which I can totally understand. A parent traveling with 2 small children would have been terrifying. And I don't remember where we stopped over. I think we stopped over in one of the Asian countries and then carried on to New Zealand. I cannot remember that much, but I do remember it being a long flight. And I remember getting to New Zealand and my dad greeting us, and he had bought me this Barbie doll that I had been wanting so much, because obviously he wasn't there for Christmas or my birthday. And so I got this Barbie doll, and I got another set with like a hairbrush and a comb and a mirror and stuff like that. I still remember it very clearly, and opening that in the hotel room where we were staying. And then after that we went to Gisborne, and that is the first town that we lived in New Zealand. It is a smaller town. It's not massive, but it's not tiny either. A smaller town on the east coast of New Zealand, and it is fairly isolated. It's quite a significant drive to get there, and it goes through like this windy gorge. But we moved there, and it is beautiful there. The beaches are beautiful. My parents did quite a lot of traveling with us at that time, and we saw quite a lot of the east coast of New Zealand. But they weren't particularly happy there for a couple reasons. One, obviously they were missing their family. I remember my parents would handwrite a letter and then fax it through to my grandparents, and then would wait and would get another handwritten letter in return over the fax machine. That's how they kept in contact with my grandparents, because it was so expensive to call back then. You just didn't. It was so expensive, and so faxing was what they did. But I think everyone sort of struggled a bit then. Both my parents were working, my mum at the local hospital and my dad as a mechanic, and they missed family. It was really hard, and also there were no churches there that we were very comfortable with. We're fairly conservative Christians. We like conservative music, and we're not old fuddy-duddies, but we do like the King James Version, and things to be a bit more conservative. And there was nothing that was doctrinally sort of on the mark for my family, and my parents struggled with that. So a year after being in New Zealand, my mum, I remember her going to look for jobs in Rotorua. I remember her going for the weekend, and she got a job over there, and we shifted over to Rotorua at the end of our first year, or I can't remember exactly. I'm guessing, because I remember us having Christmas there, so maybe we weren't even in Gisborne for an entire year. But we shifted over to Rotorua, and my grandmother, my dad's mum, came over for Christmas, and I remember that being a very happy time. I have really, really good memories of those early years in Rotorua. I mean, I have really good memories of my life and my childhood overall. Those years were fun, and my parents worked really hard. When they came over to New Zealand, they had very, very little money to their name. In fact, I may be making this up, but I'm pretty sure my mum said they had something like $500 to their name when they came over to New Zealand, which is not much. Thankfully, they did have good jobs, but it was a huge deal. And my sisters were born a few years after they moved over to New Zealand. That was kind of because in South Africa, it's not so common to have big families. You kind of tend to have 2 or 3 kids. And in New Zealand, it is far more common to have larger families. And my parents saw that, and they were like, hey, why don't we have more? So they had my sister Sarah, and then they weren't necessarily planning on having a 4th, at least not quite so soon, but my sister made her appearance as well, and which perfectly balanced out the family. I just think back on what they did and the sacrifices that they have made for our family, and I have so much respect for them and so much love for them for doing that for us, because I'm sure they would have done their best for us in South Africa as well. But just with the way things are over there with the crime and the racism on both sides, it's just, I just don't know where we would be today. I don't know if my sisters would exist today. And we found a wonderful church in Rotorua, which we still attend to this day. It is, to us, it's our extended family. The people that we've met there, honestly, they're our family. They have invested in my life and in my children's lives now. And I couldn't be more thankful for the opportunity that God gave to my family by allowing us to move here. Our ideals and our values have certainly changed as a result of it, and the church we have attended has built our family up, and we are so close. And you know what is even more amazing is, despite the huge distance between my family and those in South Africa, and now a lot of my family is all over the world. I have some in Australia and in Europe, and I have a lot of family in England and Ireland as well. And despite all of that, we're still really, really close. And I think that just comes down to making an effort. You know, my dad's mother, my grandmother, religiously emailed like once a week. I remember always growing up once we got an email, and before then it was fax, and now we have like group chats on WhatsApp, and we're always talking to each other. So I am amazed by that, because there are so many families that live in the same town that are broken and don't talk to each other, and I find that incredibly saddening, and I find it really foreign and strange, to be honest. So yeah, that is our story of moving from South Africa to New Zealand. I remember the plane ride. I remember our furniture arriving in Gisborne, because when we lived in Gisborne initially, we had no furniture because it was coming on the container. I remember making friends with the neighbours, and we used to climb over their fence, and we played games with them. And I remember like getting the honeysuckles off the honeysuckle vine and like sucking the nectar through that as a kid. And I have very, very fond memories, and I don't remember the hardship, and I don't remember the struggles of my parents financially. It wasn't a big deal to me as a child, because they just provided happiness in other ways and joy in other ways, which just proves you don't need lots of money for your children to be happy and to have a content and fulfilled life. You just don't. You just need love and family, and to enjoy the simple things. And yeah, I think I'll stop rambling now. I know this is a long video, but it is a story time video. So share with me your experiences. Have you immigrated from any other countries? Did your parents immigrate? Again, I take my hat off to them. It was huge. I just don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I could leave my family here and do that. It was a big sacrifice for them, and I am forever grateful. So if you enjoyed this, let me know by hitting the thumbs up button, because I can make more videos like this in the future if you would like. Leave me a comment below and let me know what part of the world you are from. That's really interesting to know where my viewers are actually watching from, or originate from anyway. And yeah, I will see you next time. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to keep up to date with my channel. I do post 2 times a week, and I blog as well. That will be linked in the description below and at the end of this video. I really am going to stop talking now because I need to go hang up my washing. I'll see you next time, guys. Bye.